Hello there and welcome. My name is Jess. Just the other day, I asked my aunt about a carbon footprint. What is it? Why were a lot of people talking about it these days? Was it like that time I tracked mud into class? Not really, she answered. And then she went on to explain. A carbon footprint is the mark we leave in our environment from activities which release carbons into the atmosphere. A simple example is starting a campfire. The burning of the firewood releases a gas into the air containing carbon dioxide to be exact. But there are so many other processes that do this on a really large scale. Having a carbon footprint is pretty unavoidable in modern society because nearly everything we do and everything we own is attached in some way to releasing carbon into the atmosphere. Almost any product, from cell phones to a steak sandwich, requires some sort of manufacturing and transport. And these things typically depend on the burning of fossil fuels like oil, gas, or coal. And burning fossil fuels always ends up pumping carbon gases into the air. Carbon dioxide is the most common, but there are others, including nitrous oxide and methane. A traditional car is the perfect example of a mighty carbon footprint. A car is the product of a lengthy, complicated process of manufacturing, mining, and transport, all of which depend on burning oil, gas, or coal. Not to mention, driving a car around requires even more gas, and all of this puts a large amount of carbon into the atmosphere. Now multiply that by the number of cars that exist all over the planet, and now consider that cars are just one product that we use that depends on fossil fuels. My mind was spinning thinking about all of that, and so I asked her about an apple. Did an apple have a carbon footprint? Should I just be walking everywhere and eating only fruit? She chuckled and said that an apple was grown on a farm using modern equipment, transported by a delivery truck, placed in a supermarket, picked up by someone who drove to the supermarket, dropped into a plastic grocery bag, and driven back home to be eaten. Then that apple has a carbon footprint too. I wanted to stump her, but the harder I tried to think of something that didn't have a carbon footprint, the less I could come up with. So I asked her this instead. Was a carbon footprint bad? She sighed and said we now live in a time in which we need to pay attention to our carbon footprint closely. We can't completely avoid having one, but it was more important than ever to have a small one. She explained everyone and everything on Earth was a part of the carbon cycle, and carbon was essentially the stuff of life. In fact, our bodies are made up of 18% carbon. Carbon was in the atmosphere, in the soil, in all living things, and non-living things for that matter. I was getting really confused. So, was carbon good? Well, yes, when it's a balance in the carbon cycle. What does that look like, I asked her. She said to picture a cow. A cow is eating plants and breathing out carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Later, when it dies, it will decompose into the ground and put carbon from its body into the soil. Plants draw carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere for photosynthesis and carbon out of the soil for nutrients. They, in turn, will feed the cow. In this picture, carbon is cycling through things with little to no excess. She mentioned that in the carbon cycle, there are sources and sinks. Sources put carbon into the environment, and sinks draw carbon back out. For a long time, the Earth had the ability to keep its carbon cycle in balance. Scientists call this dynamic equilibrium. However, trouble began in the late 1800s when humans started creating many more sources of carbon gases and began destroying sinks like large rainforests. I asked her if this was when she was born, and she took away my last cookie. No, this was the beginning of the industrial age and far before her time. This is when industry and manufacturing really took hold in modern countries and began to produce all the goods and services people now depend on. So what was happening with all those extra carbon gases in the atmosphere? My aunt sighed again and said they were called greenhouse gases, and they were creating something called the greenhouse effect on the planet. I knew she grew tomatoes in her greenhouse, and I knew how warm it was in there even on the coldest days. That was because sunlight shined through the glass of the greenhouse, and the glass trapped heat from the sun inside. She said a similar thing is happening with the large amount of carbon gases sitting in the atmosphere. Those gases have settled into a layer above the Earth. Sunlight shines through them, but then heat is trapped between this layer of gases and the Earth's surface. It's as if the Earth is its very own greenhouse. I asked her why this would be a problem. If warm temperatures are good for her tomatoes, why isn't it good for the earth? Well, she answered, with something I've heard her say before. More is not necessarily better. This rising temperature is called global warming, and it has begun to cause some real problems, which could turn into major destruction as time goes on. As the earth grows warmer, ice at the poles is shrinking and causing a rise in sea levels. Warmer temperatures around the globe are creating unpredictable seasons and large-scale shifts in weather patterns. Rising temperatures have been putting many animal species at risk of extinction because their environment is changing so rapidly. I like that my aunt is always honest with me, but I was starting to feel depressed. Was there anything we could do to change things? Were things completely hopeless? No, she said. Nothing is hopeless. There were steps we could take as an individual, as a country, and as a world that could make a difference. Going back to our carbon footprint, she said there are things we can all do every day that can make it smaller. She talked about 5 areas with room for improvement: transportation, water, energy, waste, and food. And she had a lot of suggestions. Biking or walking, using public transportation, and carpooling are all better choices than driving around everywhere in individual vehicles. We can be mindful on how much water we are using and not waste it. The same goes for energy. There are lots of smarter choices we can make every day to reduce our energy usage. Even something as simple as turning off the lights when we're not using them. Anything we can do to repurpose or recycle the products we buy will help reduce our waste, not to mention producing as little waste as we can to begin with. And when it comes to food, if you can't grow your own tomatoes, then the next best thing is to buy them from a local source, like a farmer's market. Buying and eating local food leaves a smaller carbon footprint, and it's tastier too. These are all small things, but, as she says, small things make a difference. It was definitely possible to take better care of the planet and reduce our carbon footprint. She may be wise and honest, and perhaps a little too tidy, but my aunt is also a pretty hopeful lady. I want to be just like her when I grow up. Here are some more tidbits about carbon footprints she shared with me. What we do every day to reduce our carbon footprint is important, but the biggest progress will be made when modern countries around the world make big changes in reducing sources and increasing sinks in the carbon cycle. As far as countries who have the largest carbon footprint, the United States and China are currently at the top of the list. Scientists estimate that the average American carbon footprint is 45 kilograms of carbon dioxide per day. Creating a new sink or improving an old sink are called negative emission schemes. Examples are restoring a forest or creating technology which draws carbon dioxide out of the air and repurposes it. Alternative energy sources are being developed to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels and thus reduce our carbon output. These include solar power, hydropower, and wind power. Many researchers have suggested that eating a vegetarian diet 1 day a week could make a difference. As far as food, there are studies which show that growing and processing of meat products has an exceptionally large carbon footprint. There's a type of restaurant called farm-to-table that's becoming more and more popular. Restaurants of this type are dedicated to having food on their menu that's grown and produced locally. Some even have their own gardens in the back. Oceans in their natural state have the ability to absorb and release carbon dioxide at almost exactly the same rate. Scientists estimate that currently about half of the carbon gases emitted into the air are being absorbed by sinks, and the other half are being trapped in the atmosphere. Seashells are made of calcium carbonate, a form of carbon. Diamonds are highly compressed carbon. The lead inside a pencil is carbon. This would make a pencil drawing of a footprint a literal carbon footprint. Feel inspired to make a difference? Here are some possible activities. There are several carbon footprint calculators online. Have a family member help you answer the questions and discover your family's personal score. There are plenty of programs which educate young people as to how they can reduce their own carbon footprint. Make a long list of possibilities and act on one to get started. Create a 30-second video which explains what a carbon footprint is and encourages your peers to reduce theirs. There are many things we use that require more energy to manufacture than what they produce. Play detective online and make a list of 10 of these energy vampires. What's the difference between a traditional filament light bulb and an LED energy-saving light bulb? Create a poster or slideshow to demonstrate your understanding. Study up on the formation of diamonds. How are they created from carbon? Why are they so valuable? What are the most recent statistics regarding the carbon footprints of countries around the world? Label a world map with 10 countries with the highest carbon footprint and the 10 countries with the lowest carbon footprint. Spend some time researching why these numbers are what they are. Carbon is the 6th element on the periodic table of elements in chemistry. Besides carbon dioxide, what other common substances can it be found in? Come up with a list of 10 substances and put them on flashcards with their name on one side and where they are used every day on the other side. Take a deeper dive into the process of photosynthesis and how plants use carbon. Draw up a poster with your findings. My aunt says everyone can take steps to take care of the planet. We're in this together. Thanks for joining me today. See you next time.
We are thrilled that you're watching Blue Studios 24/7. We're so excited to bring round-the-clock entertainment and educational content to your home. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with our latest videos. At Blue Studios, we aspire to revolutionize the way families spend time together. We empower families by providing them with tools to work together, earn and learn, and achieve new heights of success. Visit www.bluestudios.io to discover more about our mission and how we empower families to succeed. Thank you so much for being part of our community. Keep watching and learning with us. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button.